Treasure Island, Chapter 17, Page 160, The Treasure Hunt. At breakfast, Silver announced, "Aye, mates, I learned that they've hid the ship, but once when we hit the treasure, we'll jump into our jolly boats and take that ship, we will. Until then, Mr. Hawkins here will be our hostage. I'll take him in a line when we go treasure hunting." The men were cheered, but I was downcast. I knew Silver would never join the squire if the pirates did get the treasure and the ship. I still could not understand why my friends had left the stockade. Why had they given the pirates the map? And what did the doctor's warning mean? That Silver should not be in a hurry to find, page 161, the treasure? With an uneasy heart, I left with the pirates on the treasure hunt. We were an odd-looking bunch. The men carried picks and shovels and food and wore ragged clothes. All were armed to the teeth except me. Silver had 2 guns slung about him, besides the great cutlass at his waist, and a pistol in each pocket of his square-tail coat. Captain Flint sat perched upon his shoulder, gabbling sea talk. I had a rope about my waist and followed after Silver, who held the loose end of the rope, sometimes in his hand, sometimes in his teeth. For all the world, I was led like a dancing bear. We straggled to the beach where the 2 jolly boats awaited us. The plan was to row them to the landing spot close to where the treasure was marked on the map, and then follow the map clues. Tall tree, spyglass shoulder, bearing a point to the north of north-northeast, Skeleton Island, east-southeast, and by east, 10 feet. We landed at the mouth of the river that runs down the side of Spyglass Hill. There we got out and began our climb through swampy ground. Page 162. An image of Jim Hawkins. Page 163. Silver towing Jim Hawkins. Note Captain Flint on Silver's shoulder. Page 164. The land became steeper and stonier. Then we came to an area of sweet-smelling shrubs and thickets of nutmeg trees. Right before us was a flat area with tall pine trees on the shoulder of Spyglass Hill. One of these had to be the tall tree of Flint's map. The men spread out, shouting and leaping to and fro. I followed behind Long John Silver. From time to time I had to help him or he would have missed his footing and fallen down the hill. After half a mile, we came to the edge of the flat area. Suddenly, one of the men began to cry out as if in terror. We ran forward thinking the treasure was found, but then a chill struck every heart. There at the foot of a big pine tree lay a human skeleton grown over with vines. The skeleton lay perfectly straight, his feet pointed in one direction. His hands were raised above his head like a diver's, pointing in the other direction. Silver was the only one calm. "I'm thinking," he said, "the tip-top point of Skeleton Island seems to lie right along the line of them bones." The men checked the compass, and sure enough, the body pointed straight in the direction of the island, and the compass read east, southeast, and by east. Page 165. The skeleton. Page 166. "I thought so," cried Silver. "This here is a pointer, one of Flint's jokes. It makes me cold to think of it. Him and those 6 was alone here, and he killed them all. This one he hauled here and laid down as a pointer. Shiver my timbers." "I saw Flint die with my own eyes," said Morgan. "Dead, aye, sure enough he's dead and gone below," said another. "But if a spirit walked, it would be Flint's. He died bad, did Flint." "Aye, that he did," said another. "First he raged, then he called for rum, and then he sang 15 men on the dead man's chest. He turned blue, he did." Come," said Silver. "Stow this talk. He's dead and his spirit don't walk. Ahead to the gold." We started, but the pirates kept side by side and spoke in frightened whispers. Before us stood Spyglass Hill with many tall pine trees and cliffs. Silver took out his compass. "There are 3 tall trees to check," said he. "It should be easy enough to find the stuff now." "I don't feel easy," growled Morgan, "thinking of Flint. I think has done me." "He were an ugly devil," cried another pirate. All of a sudden, out of the trees in front of us, a high, trembling voice sang out. Page 167. 15 men on the dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum." I've never seen men more scared than those pirates. The color went from their 6 faces. Some leapt to their feet, some clawed hold of others. Morgan groveled on the ground. "It's Flint!" cried George Merry. The song stopped as suddenly as it began. "Come," said Silver in a shaky voice. "This won't do. I can't name that voice, but it's someone playing. You bet on that." But then the same voice began wailing, "Darby McGraw, Darby McGraw," again and again and again, then a little higher, "Fetch the rum, Darby." The pirates were in absolute terror. They was Flint's last words, moaned Morgan. That fixes it, gasped one. Let's go. Shipmates, Silver cried. I'm here to get that gold, and I'm not be beat by man or devil. I never feared Flint in his life, and I'll face him dead. There's a treasure in gold not a quarter of a mile from here. I tell you, that weren't Flint's spirit. Come to think on it, said Mary, it wasn't like Flint's voice after all. It was more like somebody else's voice, more like 167. Page 168. By thunder, Ben Gunn, roared Silver. Aye, and so it were, cried Morgan. Ben Gunn's spirit it were. Why, nobody minds Ben Gunn, cried Mary. Dead or alive, nobody minds him. Soon they were chatting together and setting forth again. It was fine open walking up here. We could see out over the water, where I had tossed and trembled in the coracle. After checking a couple of tall pines, we saw one that rose nearly 200 feet into the air. This had to be the tall tree. Somewhere beneath its shadow lay 700,000 in gold. The thought of the money erased any terror the men had felt. Their eyes burned in their heads. Their feet grew speedier, just thinking of the treasure that lay waiting for each of them. Silver hobbled, grunting on his crutch. He cursed like a madman when the flies settled on his hot face. From time to time he yanked the rope and gave me a deadly look. I knew his thoughts. If he found gold, he would forget his promise to me and the doctor. He planned to seize the treasure, find the Hispaniola, cut every honest throat on that island, and sail away. Page 169. Silver and Jim. Page 170. We were now at the edge of a thicket. Hurrah, mates, all together, shouted Mary. They broke into a run, but then we saw them all stop. A low cry arose. Silver doubled his pace, digging away with the foot of his crutch. In the next moment, he and I also came to a dead halt. Before us was a deep pit. Down inside was a broken pickaxe and boards from broken crates. All was clear. The treasure had already been found. The 700,000 in gold was gone. The men looked like they had been struck, but I could see Silver's face hatching a new plan. Jim, he whispered, take that and stand by. He passed me a double-barrel pistol. Slowly he led me to the other side of the pit. I could not help whispering, So you've changed sides again? The pirates cried and leapt in the pit to dig with their fingers. Morgan found one small coin. 1 coin, he roared, shaking it at Silver. That's your 700,000, is it? Dig away, boys, said Silver with a cool voice. You'll find some coppers, I should guess. Coppers? Screamed Mary. Mates, do you hear that? I tell you now, that man there knew it all along. Look at his face. Page 171. Pirates in the pit. Page 172. Ah, George, said Silver. Are you standing in as captain again? By this time, the others scrambled out of the pit and stood with Mary. Well, there we stood, 2 on one side, 5 on the other, the pit between us. Silver never moved. He watched them, upright on his crutch, and looked as cool as ever I saw him. Mates, said Mary, there's 2 of them alone there. One's the old cripple that's blundered this whole thing. The other's that cub I mean to have the heart of. Now, mates, he was raising his arm and his voice when, crack, 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 3 musket shots flashed out of the thicket. Mary tumbled headfirst into the pit. The man with the bandage spun around like a top and fell on his side. The other 3 turned and ran for it with all their might. Before you could wink, Long John sent a shot into the struggling Mary. George, said Silver, I reckon that settled you. At the same moment, the doctor, Gray, and Ben Gunn joined us with smoking muskets from out of the thicket. 173, Chapter 18, and last. Forward, cried the doctor. After 'em, they're headed to the boats. We set off, plunging through the bushes. I tell you, Silver was anxious to keep up with us. He leapt on his crutch till the muscles of his chest were fit to burst. From behind us, he called out, Doctor, see there, no hurry. We could see 3 men running right for Mizzenmast Hill. We were already between them and the boat, so we sat down to breathe. Thank you kindly, Doctor, Silver said, mopping his face. You came in the nick of time for me and Hawkins. Then he added, So it's you, Ben Gunn. Page 174. I'm Ben Gunn, I am, replied the maroon, wriggling like an eel. And how do, Mr. Silver? Pretty well, I think he says you. Ben, murmured Silver, to think as if you've done me. As we walked down to the boats, the doctor told us Ben Gunn's story and what happened after he himself had gone to find Gunn that morning. Ben Gunn was the hero from beginning to end. In his long, lonely wanderings about the island, Gunn had found the skeleton and the treasure. He dug it up and carried it on his back in many weary journeys from the foot of the tall pine to a cave he had on the northeast of the island. There it was safely stored, and this he had told the doctor. When the doctor saw the ship was no longer in the cove, thanks to me, he had gone to Silver to make a bargain. He asked that the pirates allow the squire's crew to leave the stockade in peace. In return, the doctor gave Silver the map, which was now useless, and promised food and supplies of medicine for the sick men. The bargain was made. My friends had left the stockade and headed to Ben Gunn's cave. Page 175. The treasure in a sack. The doctor had gotten Gray and Gunn to go with him to the side of the tall pine tree and the pit. Gunn ran ahead to his old shipmates, singing and calling out words of Flint. Page 176. When we came to the jolly boats, we destroyed one and got aboard the other to row the 8 miles to North Inlet. We passed the mouth of Ben Gunn's cave and saw the squire waving to us. We all gave him 3 cheers, including Silver. 3 miles farther, what should we meet but the Hispaniola afloat and drifting? As it was, she was in good shape except for the mainsail. We attached another anchor and dropped it over. Then we rowed round near the cave and hiked up. The squire met us, glaring at Silver. "John Silver, I'm told I am not to let you hang, but you're a monstrous villain and impostor." "Thank ye kindly, sir," replied Silver, saluting. The cave was a large, airy place overhung with ferns. Captain Smollett lay before a nice fire. In a far corner lay great heaps of coins and stacks of gold bars, Flint's treasure. Later I would help pack the coins. It was a strange collection, much like the coins that Billy Bones had. English, French, Spanish doubloons, and pieces of 8. There were round pieces, square pieces, and pieces with holes in the middle. Nearly every kind of money in the world, I think. Sadly, I thought of the 17 from our crew that had died from that treasure. Page 177. What a meal I had with my friends that night, with salted goat and a bottle of old wine from the Hispaniola. Never were people brighter or happier, and there was Silver joining in the laughter and lending a hand just like in his sea cook days. Page 178. The next morning we began to cart the gold to the jolly boat. Gray and Gunn then made trips to the ship. Day after day this work went on with no sign of the 3 pirates. On the 3rd night the doctor and I heard their far-off singing. "Drunk," said Silver. "Malaria," said the doctor. A council was held, and it was decided we must desert them on the island, to the huge glee, I must say, of Ben Gunn. We left a good stock of gunpowder and shot, most of the salted goat, a few medicines, some tools, clothing, a spare sail, and some rope. At last, one fine morning, we pulled up the anchor. High above flew the flag that the captain had flown and fought at the stockade. Rounding the island, we saw something that grabbed our hearts. All 3 of the marooned men were kneeling with their arm raised, calling, "For God's sake, don't leave us to die in such a place." The doctor shouted out where we had left food and supplies. One leapt to his feet with a hoarse cry and sent a musket shot, whistling over Silver's head and through the mainsail. That was, at least, the end of that. Before noon, to my joy, the highest rock of Treasure Island had sunk into the blue round of sea. Page 179. The 3 men begging. Page 180. We all worked double shift and safely sailed to Spanish America. The doctor, the squire, and I went ashore to the happy faces of the islanders and the wonderful sights and smells of tropical fruits. When we returned to the Hispaniola, Ben Gunn told us that Silver was gone. He had gotten one of the sacks and slipped away. I think we were all pleased to be so cheaply rid of him. Well, to make a long story short, we got a few new hands on board and we reached Bristol just as Mr. Blandley was thinking of sending a rescue ship. All of us had a share of the treasure. Captain Smollett is now retired from the sea. Gray not only saved his money, but he is now part owner of a fine, full-rigged ship, married besides, and the father of a family. As for Ben Gunn, he spent or lost his share in 3 weeks. The squire gave him a gamekeeper's job. Folks make fun of his ways, but he has become a favorite singer in church on Sundays. Of Silver we have heard no more. That seafaring man with one leg has at last gone clean out of my life. I would guess he lives in comfort with a wife and his parrot, Captain Flint. For all I know, the rest of the silver bars, page 181, and weapons marked on the map still lie where Flint buried them. Certainly I will never look for them. Oxen and ropes would not bring me back to that accursed island, and the worst dreams I ever have are when I hear the surf booming about its coasts, or spring up right in bed with the sharp voice of Captain Flint still ringing in my ears. Pieces of 8! Pieces of 8! 182. About the author. Robert Louis Stevenson was born in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1850 into a family of lighthouse engineers. Robert loved the sea. While studying law at the University of Edinburgh, he discovered another love, writing. Stevenson had been sickly and frail since childhood, and his family worried about his health. Despite these concerns, Stevenson went on to achieve great success as a writer. Stevenson traveled in search of adventure in a climate that might ease his poor health. He married an American, Fanny Osborne, who shared his love of travel and supported his writing. Stevenson sketched a map of a treasure island for his stepson Lloyd one day, who asked that he write a story about it, and Treasure Island was published in 1883. He also wrote The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1886, and Kidnapped, 1886. Stevenson moved to the South Pacific island of Samoa to improve his health. However, in 1894, at the age of 44, he died there and was buried on a hill overlooking the sea he loved. Treasure Island, the end.